Hi, welcome to Adventures with Dr. Joe. Let's build a bluebird house. Here's a great set of plans, and I'll leave a link in the description. Bluebirds are fantastic. They're wonderful birds. They're fantastic to watch. Many times they'll have more than one family a season, and it's fantastic to see the fledglings fly out, and the bluebirds, of course, are beautiful year-round. There are many woods to make the bluebird house out of, but I think one of the very best ones would be a mold and rot resistant wood such as western red cedar. Eastern red cedar is something to consider, but that is also known as aromatic cedar. We're all familiar with this type of cedar wood, but it creates, or it gives off, volatile organic compounds that probably aren't so great for the birds. So if we build one out of this eastern red cedar, probably be the next season that the birds will want to go into it when all of those volatile organic compounds have dissipated. I've salvaged some western red cedar when I replaced the treads of in the rear of the house, the steps. Basically, they had snugged up against the steel staircase, and water got in there and didn't get out, so they were rotted, and I replaced them with cypress, yet left a gap so they would dry and not rot. Well, when I took these all out, instead of throwing them away, I started to just cut the ends off, and suddenly the wood inside was perfect. So I used those to make a nice planter for my daughter, and I think this will be the perfect wood to build a bluebird house. And you can see I have one marked out here, every single piece, the back, the roof, one side, two sides, the door, and the base. And the bluebird house is very simple, and it opens at the bottom so you can clean it out and take the old nesting material out for the next year. And this will be good. It's thick enough that I'll be able to not only make one birdhouse out of this, but at least two and possibly three. Because what we'll do is we'll take this and we'll resaw it, because the plans call for material that is 3/4 of an inch thick. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rip it at 5.5 for the back. Cross cut it here, rip it at 10, and rip it again at 4 3/4, and cut all these pieces out, and then take them to the bandsaw and just do some resawing. So let's get the table saw set up to make this first cut. So we'll set this at 5.5. I've raised the blade so it will clear this. I've got my push sticks, and we'll turn on our dust collection. And I have hear protection and eye protection. So there's our first cut. So now I've got this cut in half, and I cut it twice to match this. So we got the roof, the back, the base, the door, and two sides. What we'll do now is we'll take this to the miter saw and cut this, and take this to the miter saw and cut this. Then we'll rip this to the final width. So let's go to the miter saw. So I want to cut this 6 9/16, so I use a 10-inch spacer bar for my repeatable straw track. We're going to have dust collection hooked up, and we're going to cut that. There's the roof, or 3 roof probably. This board we're going to cut to 15 inches. It's already 5.5. So I've got it at 15. Make a cut. Measure it. 15 exactly. Good. Now we've got to do some ripping at the table saw, so let's go back there. Okay. The width for the sides is 4 3/4. Let's reset that. Great. We still have the proper blade height. And we'll get ready to turn on dust collection and take care of that. So we'll turn on our central vac, central dust collection. And start our cut in a second. Remember to be sure the gates are open. They are. Let's make our cut. Cut twice, cut once. Our final cut to width is 4 inches. We'll make this cut. That was a pretty good layout when you consider all the parts will be made from this, and then this is all of our scrap. That's pretty nice, and it included a defect that I wanted to get out of there anyway, so this is a pretty good use of this wood. Now we're going to take this to the bandsaw and do some resawing, because we want the width of these things to be 3/4 of an inch. I'm not going to make this cut or this cut yet. We're going to keep these full length, because after we resaw this, first of all, it's safer to resaw a larger piece like this. We're going to run it through the thickness planer, and you really can't run a really small piece like that through the thickness planer. You need something longer for safety, so that's one of the reasons to keep it this length. Okay, we're going to do our first cut with the bandsaw. This fast cap device is quite good at marking. I've drawn this out at 3/4 of an inch, and we're going to cut a little bit thicker than that, so I've drawn this out 3/4 of an inch and make it a little wider. Got the bandsaw tensioned up. I'm ready to go. We're going to make our first cut, our resaw cut. Okay, here we go. There's our first piece. Obviously it has some issues with it because of the wood boring bees, but I think we'll take care of that. I'll do the final resawing on all these parts and be back in just a minute. So over here we've got these parts that are ready to go through the thickness planer, but then these are the middle parts that I need to make one surface flat again. We'll run these through this jointer and then bring them over to the thickness planer, so they're all 3/4 of an inch. We're going to run it through this to make one edge flat and then get the correct thickness. That side's flat. Now we can thickness planer. Do that to the other parts as well. This is the thickness planer. It has a spiral cutter head. We're going to take all these parts and make them the same thickness, all 3/4 of an inch. Okay, I adjusted the bevel. You can see the laser lights are right on that. I measured it again. It's 11 1/4. That's exactly where the laser comes across the board. 10 1/4 up here. We're ready to make this cut. And now that we've made this one, we can turn this board upside down and okay, we're going to use a Forstner bit. It drills a nice flat bottom hole. These are Amana. They're actually made in Israel. They're very nice. Very clean cut. We'll probably do a video on how to sharpen these sometime in the future. 1.5 inches for bluebirds. Excuse me, 1 1/4 inches for wrens or nuthatch. So 1.5 tends to be specific for bluebirds, or maybe even, some people suggest 1 5/8, a little bit bigger, but 1.5 seems to be good. It's in the middle at 2 inches, because these are 4 inches wide, and 7 inches to the center from the bottom. So we'll drill these. We'll get this lined up perfectly. And because this wood is pretty soft, it should drill pretty easily. So look how clean that hole is. So we laid out the walls, the door, the bottom, and the roof, and marked basically a point 1.5 inches from the bottom, and it will be about 1 1/4 inches from the top, or 1 3/8. Then marked potential holes to be drilled, and we'll use this as a template and drill the other 2 backs. We checked the diameter basically of these screws. We're going to use some no corrode screws, weatherproof. Looked at those in a drill guide. .5/32. They slip through pretty easily, so I got a 5/32 inch grab point bit, and we'll just drill these holes, and they'll serve as a template, and we'll drill the other ones too. Matter of fact, we can actually drill this. We can drill at least 2, maybe 3 at the same time. Let's try that. Okay, here we go. Now, it may not have gone through the bottom one, but at least it left an imprint, so I'll just finish up those holes. Okay, so I've got it lined up 1.5 inches from the bottom. There we go. Nice and flush. Put this first screw in. Perfect. We'll line this side up so it's nice and flush. There, got that going. Now, we'll do the other side. But this side, we'll put the door in. So we know it has an absolutely perfect fit. And again, line it up so we're 1¼ inches, or 1½ from the bottom. And they're nice, and these screws are this wood is soft, so they're nice and flush. And here's the door. It's got a nice tight fit. Now we'll put the bottom on. On the sides, I drilled some breathing holes in the top. And on the bottom, I also drilled some breathing holes because I don't want this to get too moist in there. I like to have good ventilation, and I think the birds will appreciate that. I also did a back cut on the lid, 10 degrees. So instead of fitting like this, it's going to fit nicely like that. Okay, so it's all put together, and I sanded the side of the door so it has a nice loose fit. And we want to put in a couple of these panhead screws into here so it'll swing open so we can clean it out. And again, I think that this drill bit will be fine for that. So right about here. Tight. Great. Now that'll open. To be cleaned out. Actually, I think I'm going to position it so there's a little overhang with the door. Then that'll even make it a lot easier to open the door and clean it out, and gives more ventilation out of the top. Just a small edge. So here we are. We've made some bluebird houses. They're made out of western red cedar, 3/4 inch, and we did drill some ventilation holes here and also in the bottom. There is a little gap above the door which will help as well. These are panhead screws that allow the door to open up, and then I over drilled and put a solid brass screw in the bottom as a lock for the door. Easy to get in and out when you're trying to clean the nests out. And you just put it in and turn it a click or two, leave it loose, and it'll protect it from opening up. 1½ inch hole again. These should last for many, many years. There's no finish on these intentionally. This is western red cedar. It's very rot and insect proof, and I think it'll last a long time. If we can make it better, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your bluebird houses. They're great, and I'll leave a link in the description. Thank you again. Stay safe.